Welcome to the Cheese and Alien Show, week 14, after a great race weekend at Charlotte. Now, if you watch every week, and especially if you tune in last week, you may be wondering, why is the Alien doing it for this week as well as she did last week? Well, the Cheese's life is pretty crazy this week, and then my life is really crazy next week, so we decided to swap weeks, and so now I'm reporting to you for the second week in a row, and then you will have the Cheese for 2 weeks in a row. And I will let you know next time that you do see me, it'll be a little bit different background. I'm in the process of moving, and so I will no longer be at the current residence that I am the next time that you see me. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Again, like I said earlier, we had a great racing weekend at Charlotte. So let's get to it. First with our shout outs. The first one is from the nationwide race, and I'll give a huge shout out to Joey Coulter. Made his nationwide debut and he finished 10th. So that is awesome. Congratulations, Joey. That's a great finish. You're in great equipment, of course, but you were able to get a 10th place finish. And so that's just wonderful to see, especially at Charlotte. Second shout out goes to Denny Hamlin. He finished second in the nationwide race, and he finished second in the Cup race this weekend, which is very good. And he knew he did not have the best car out there, and he recognized it, and he still fought as much as he could to try and get to close in on the leader. Especially in the Cup race. He tried to catch Casey towards the end, and he ran his tires out, and they weren't doing what he wanted them to anymore. So congratulations, Denny. Strong second place finishes in both the nationwide and the Cup races. Next shout out goes to Roush Fenway Racing in the Cup race. All three of the drivers finished in the top 10. Which is wonderful, especially because I had one of the Roush boys as part of my streak for fantasy, and the Cheese also had a Roush boy for her streak in fantasy on NASCAR.com. Next shout out goes to Landon Castle. We don't hear much about him as far as in the NASCAR world, but he got an 18th place finish. And that's pretty good, and that's his best finish so far this season. His previous one was a 20th place, and so he finished better than that. And I'm so excited to see more finishes like this from him, and also if his teammates Travis Kvapil and now David Rudiman is now part of the BK Racing team, and I'm excited to see what the three of them can now do. Especially with Landon proving that they can get a top 20 finish. Next, we're going to go to the fashion segment, which I kind of want to tie these in with the shout-outs as well. So first shout-out with the fashion segment goes to whoever designs Joey Logano's fire suits. If you did not see his fire suit for the nationwide race this weekend, you are truly missing out, because it was amazing. He had a tuxedo fire suit, and so they have the t-shirts where it looks like you're wearing a tuxedo. His fire suit looked like he was wearing a tuxedo, so that was pretty awesome. And of course, with GameStop is a huge sponsor for him for the nationwide series, and they were promoting the game Hitman, and so I guess the character that they have on the cover of the game of Hitman is wearing a tuxedo, so they wanted to replicate that with Joey's fire suit. And that was the most awesome fire suit I think I've ever seen here in NASCAR. Well, besides some of those Sponsifire commercials a couple years ago and last year and everything. The next shout out in the fashion segment goes to Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the IZOD IndyCar series. Of course, we had the Indianapolis 500 this past Sunday, and we all know that last year Dan Weldon was the winner of the Indy 500, and then unfortunately we lost him several months later. They paid respect to him, and they handed out the shades that Dan Weldon would wear, the white shades, and they passed them out to fans, and the fans proudly wore them in the Indy stands. And I guess there were also people at the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte, and they were sporting those Dan Weldon shades too. So I just am so happy about that. Dan Weldon was a great driver, a great man, and to see him be respected like that is such a wonderful thing. Next, I want to talk about the nationwide race that we had in Charlotte. We have some penalties from things that happened before the cars got on the track, and also a post-race inspection. First off, there was, before the car even got on the track, NASCAR looked at the number 43 car of Michael Annett, and he had an illegal upper front bumper. And so Michael did not get penalized for it. He did not lose any points for the nationwide series, but his crew chief was fined $10,000, and he was placed on probation along with the car chief, and both of them are on probation for the remainder of the year. And so, as a huge Michael Annett fan, I'm kind of excited to see that at Richard Petty Motorsports, they're pushing the envelope, much like Chad Knaus does, and that they're really pushing the envelope and trying to get the best that they can for their car. And again, I'm glad that Michael is not penalized. He didn't drive the car on the track whatsoever, and so it was just his car chief and the crew chief that were kind of got the brunt of that. The next one was a post-race inspection. The 41, driven by Timmy Hill, failed. It was failed due to it was too low in the front on the heights. And so Timmy Hill lost 6 points in the nationwide series, and I believe there were some fines, probably and I think with the crew chief and possibly the car chief. I don't exactly remember the details of that. But we did have 2 penalties, and it's just really interesting to me that we have so many of these fines that are showing up, and these penalties showing up in the nationwide series. To me, it doesn't seem like we've had this much of a problem in the nationwide series, but I'm glad to see that people are trying to, get the best out of their cars and try to perform the best that they can. And then next, with the nationwide race, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., of course, you should know by now if you tune in every week. He's a huge fan of both the Cheese and I, and he had some problems this weekend. He ended up with a broken drive shaft, and there is even the ESPN showed part of that drive shaft. Ricky is driving down pit road, and part of that broken part of the drive shaft comes out from underneath his car. And so Ricky had tons of problems, and so therefore he didn't finish as well. He lost some of the momentum he had as far as the point standings, but now we have Elliott Sadler closing in, and I'm hoping this will be a good points race again this year, like we had last year for the nationwide series. And I won't even talk about the winner, because he doesn't even deserve to have his name brought up here, so I'm just going to skip over that. Next, we talk about the Cup race, the Coca-Cola 600, a huge race for the racing season in NASCAR. And first, I want to give a huge congratulations to the winner, Casey Kane. So excited. I would have been happy if either Denny or Casey came home with the win, and I'm glad that Casey was able to do that for us. And that was his first Hendrick win, and there were some pretty interesting things that I thought with this win. This was his first Hendrick win, He won on his 300th Cup start. So the Coca-Cola 600 was Casey's 300th NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race, and he won it, joining a very select group of people that have won a Cup race on their 300th start. And he won his 3rd Coca-Cola 600, so quite a couple of threes going on there. And I was glad he was able to give Hendrick his 201st win in the Cup Series for Rick Hendrick. Next we have Richard Petty Motorsports. They're continuing to struggle this weekend. I talked about Michael Annette's problems earlier, and now they had problems in the Cup race. Marcos ended up with broken equipment and finished 32nd, and then Eric, and both of them were in the front row. Remember this. Both of them started in the front row for their Coca-Cola 600. Marcos ended up with broken equipment, finished 32nd, and then Eric struggled for the majority of the race to even just stay on the lead lap. And he ended up finishing 16th, which is not bad. And so it's just hard to see them struggle like that. Next, about the Cup race, we have Greg Biffle. He was definitely the top performing Roush Fenway car in the Coca-Cola 600, and he led a ton of laps. He led on the 100th lap, he led on the 200th lap, the halfway point, he led at the 300th lap, and unfortunately he wasn't able to get the 400th lap, but that's okay because another great driver got that 400th lap. And Biff performed really well, and if you listen to his radio, he was not happy with his car. And this proves that he wanted to continually make his car better and better. It wasn't to where he wanted it to be, and it was still performing really well. But he's saying, you know, we can do this, we need to change this, we need to change that. And so that proves that even though he was sitting up front and doing really well, he wasn't just going to sit back and say, oh, this is the best my car is going to get. No, he was constantly seeing where he could improve. Next, my bones to pick, or bone, I should say, the Indy 500 commercials. It was great for them to show some of the past victors of the Indy 500, but there was one that I believe they should have focused on, and that was last year's Indy 500 winner, Dan Weldon. Of course, he wasn't able to win, being that he is gone now, but still, I believe in the commercial they could have shown him. They could have talked about him. It was just disappointing for me that they just didn't even bring him into the picture. Not that I noticed for the commercial. And so that's just really disappointing to me as a recent Indy fan. I first watched the last Indy 500, the last couple laps, because I was busy with other things, and I just caught the last 10-15 laps, and I've been trying to watch them ever since. And I was just very disappointed with that they did that with the commercial this year. Next, we talk about fantasy every week, and I won, thankfully, and so I'm glad to be sticking with the drivers that I think are strong and beating out the cheese once again. Next, we have a fantastic weekend ahead of us. We have the Monster Mile. They're in Dover, Delaware. First, with that, I'm excited to see Ryan Truex back in the Nationwide car after his surprise appendectomy. And this is his home track, so I'm praying that he does really well. And we will also have to see who the monster gets a hold of this weekend. So hope everyone has a wonderful week. Hope you all had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and tune in next week to see what the cheese has to say after I'm sure it'll be a very eventful, exciting Dover weekend.